Okay, good evening. I'm here with the Jonases.
In fact, I think in the early 1900s.
Okay. Yeah.
You see that?
See if it catches this time. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Tell me your names again and we will go from there.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm Hylton Jonas.
And I'm Veronique.
And Veronique, tell us again where your family came from originally and why they ended up in South Africa. I'm sorry about that.
My family, both my mother and my father, came from the island. Oops.
You know what it's saying? It's charged, but it's saying that it's not charged enough. Ay, ay, ay. Is it better?
I don't know. You're going to tell me.
Do you think that's a good... Is there something wrong with that plug?
Well,
Then you want to check that the plug's...
it's in and it's on and everything's
No, everything's,
loaded.
hold on a minute. No, everything's good.
Yeah?
Let's give it a whirl.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. They'll edit it, don't worry.
So,
Start again.
No, that's okay. So you came from Rhodes.
So my parents came from the island of Rhodes in Greece. They were Sephardic Jews, originally from the Inquisition, coming from Spain. We spoke Ladino at home. My parents spoke Ladino at home, and I learned. And we lived in the Congo till 1967, at which time we immigrated to South Africa. We left the Congo because of the revolution in the Congo. We established ourselves in South Africa, and that is where I met Hylton.
Okay.
and so we kind of went from the pan, how do you say that, from the pan into the fire, going to South Africa. But nonetheless, my paternal grandparents came from England, and they immigrated in the late 1800s. You know, there was a lot of immigration to South Africa at that time, and my father was in fact born in South Africa. My maternal grandparents came from Lithuania in the early 1900s, and obviously the pogroms and things that drove them out of there. In fact, a lot of family came at that time, and my mom was about 3 years old, so she was actually born in Lithuania, and at the age of 3 they went to South Africa. And for similar reasons. I mean, that's what Jews do. I mean, we just we travel, we take our little bags and we travel. Veronique's parents were fortunate to get out of Rhodes and start a new life in the Congo, and then when problems came in the Congo, they then went to South Africa. In the same way, my mom's family left and they went to South Africa, and they lived a good life for many, many years.
So basically you're a mixed marriage. Sephardi
We are
and
a mixed marriage
Ashkenazi.
of Sephardic
Very good.
and Ashkenazi,
Okay.
and they still remind me of that every time I'm with the Sephardic group, trust me.
I think it's great. Great. Can you each tell us a little bit about a couple of memorable moments in your lives when you were young, living and growing up in South Africa? Anything at all?
Well, I only got there when I was 16, so I didn't really grow up in South
That's
Africa.
So your teen years.
My
can you-
teen years,
Mhm.
yeah. My memorable moments were meeting my husband.
That's
really.
cheating.
I don't have memorable. We lived in a lovely little quaint village in Cape Town, Muizenberg, and it was really special because it was a one synagogue. How many people? Very small town. But we knew everybody, and that was pretty special.
Wonderful. Hylton?
Yeah, I obviously grew up in South Africa from the early days, and the thing that I always remember about that is that we lived in a town, as Veronique says, where you walked everywhere or you rode your bike everywhere, and it was just such a very simplistic life. It was actually wonderful. And the other thing that I remember that I think has always played an important part in my life is the fact that my parents were always involved in the community. My dad was the president of the Hebrew school, we used to call it Cheder, and then became president of the synagogue. They were always involved in fundraising and helping to raise funds, and so it was something that I began to do even as a teenager. And the other thing that sort of is sort of aligned with that is that when Veronique came from the Congo and we met up, we became involved together in the community. We went and we joined Young Lions. In fact, I became the president of Young Lions while we were married, which was most unusual. We had just got married.
What is Young Lions?
Like Lions.
It's the Lions Club. You know, you have the you have the
Like
Lions Club,
Rotary.
like Rotary.
Ah, okay.
And so this was Young Lions, the little younger generation like ourselves. We're 20 years old. And in fact, we used to do camps for children in a home. And once we got married, they set up a special place for the two of us so that we could be a married couple and stay in the camp together.
So now back up a little bit and tell us how and when did you meet?
Well,
we met soon after I arrived.
soon after I
And
grabbed her real fast.
We met at the synagogue.
Yeah.
Which was,
Yeah, a friend of hers
you know,
A friend of hers brought her to the synagogue to show her boyfriend, and I happened to be sitting next to her boyfriend. And so that night she had a little party at her house on Friday night, a little party for everybody, and that's where we met. And I didn't let her go once I met her, that's for sure. I knew I was marrying up if I ever was going to do that.
we actually dated for 5 years
5
before we got
years.
married.
Yeah.
Been together a long time.
Yeah. So I assume soon after that you started thinking about possibly emigrating elsewhere.
Yeah.
So how and why and how did that decision come about?
Well, not soon after
No.
that. We had 3 children in South Africa. And when Gary was 2, our youngest was 2, that's when we moved.
So we
But
got
we did plan beforehand.
so we got married in 1972. And we emigrated in 1982, so it was a 10-year span. And in that 10 years, I think we realized that there were things that ultimately we felt, if you looked at the rest of Africa, you looked at where Veronique was coming from, you know, we felt that there was ultimately going to be an issue that we felt that we wanted to go out and take our children out. Veronique was also, by the way, very liberal, as she is now. And I was quite concerned that she'd be arrested and be thrown out. But at the end of the day, we always felt that it was a country that we couldn't spend our lives in.
Especially with our children.
With the kids. And we were very fortunate. I went to work for a guy by the name of Ruben Rosenblum, and we formed a great alliance. I was roughly the same age as his children. And we just started talking about the fact that he wanted his kids to leave. And so he said, you know, we'd like you all to go together. And so for us, that's how that evolved, because we all reckoned that it was, you know, it was time to leave the country. And if we were young, we might as well put our efforts in somewhere else and build a future for ourselves and for our kids.
Yeah.
What was your immediate family's reaction to your decision to go?
Well,
Both of
my family, my mother was supportive. I had actually just lost my father, but she was very supportive. She always said to me, I had to leave my family in Rhodes, and now you're going to have to leave your family. And so there was really no hold back there.
Yeah.
It was hard to leave for us. It was hard to leave them, but my mother was pretty supportive. His parents were a little bit more cut up than my mother was.
Yeah.
My mother was very independent.
Yeah.
Much more.
My mom was very upset, and for her this was going to be a big transition in her life. She never ever anticipated, you know, how much could she travel or afford to travel to come to the United States to visit us. She was losing her grandchildren, and I had a brother who was in South Africa, and I never forget, we were having a farewell Shabbat dinner, and I said to them, I said, look, I know this is hard for all of us, but I will tell you that one day, God willing, we will all be together again in the United States. And it was a dream, but ultimately it did become a reality, and we were very fortunate. One of those very fortunate few that were able to bring our parents out here to us, and my brother now is also in the United States.
I was just going to say, what about siblings and or good friends? Did some of them come over? Did they come on their own? Did they come a lot later, or how is that?
Well, from our perspective, I came over here with, as I said to you, with Lawrence Rosenblum and Natalie Rosenblum. We came on the same boat, on the same plane, basically, and then the rest of their family came out over a period of time. But really, some of our friends emigrated to other parts of the world, be it Australia, Canada, and other parts of the United States.
Yeah, but Joe's asking about siblings.
No,
Right,
well, you
that's
said
okay.
siblings or friends.
Yeah.
My brother immigrated to...
Well, he only came much later.
Yeah, he came a couple of years later, I think 1984. He came and he went first to Washington and then to Irvine, and they live in Irvine now. Veronique's brother, he always lived in Brussels, in Belgium, and it's funnily enough, a number of years, he always sent his kids here to the United States for university.
He was educated here.
Yeah, he was also, that's right, he was educated here, so he knew the United States, and in fact worked for a number of companies here. And so they, in fact, have eventually emigrated here themselves, and they live in Florida.
Oh. Had you considered other countries, or was it always going to be the United States?
That's a good discussion, right?
Well, yeah, we did
yeah.
we did consider Israel. It wasn't a serious consideration, but it was a
conversation.
Should we turn left or should we turn right?
Yeah.
And it just made more sense to turn left.
And Veronique
It
kept
was
saying to me, again, we were fortunate because we were coming with something, but Veronique always felt we should have gone to Israel, or we should go to Israel. But it was not as easy.
So you're here, and how in the world, my favorite question is, how did you pick Dallas, Texas, in the United States to come?
We did a reconnaissance tour of the United States. We left our children behind and we came for 6 weeks, which is unheard of. My daughter still blames us for leaving her with her grandma for 6 weeks. She was a little 6-month-old baby. But anyway, we did do a tour. We looked at several towns that were under consideration: Atlanta, Houston, California, specifically Irvine. What else?
No, and then we...
What other towns?
No, that's about it.
Those were the towns
Yeah,
under
that was it.
consideration. And started meeting people. When we were in Dallas, we met. We actually did meet.
No, not really. Then you didn't come again. I kept coming a number of times.
Right.
And we went to Houston and Dallas, and we looked at Dallas and we said, this is great. But we did realize that there were a lot of South Africans in Dallas. And so we felt that if we were going to make this immigration, my goodness, we might as well immigrate to where there are other South Africans. The other thing was that California was much too expensive for us at the time. We couldn't take out much money. And so therefore we felt, could we really do something? And remember, we were coming without a business and without an income. So we had to kind of be sort of attuned to what we could do once we were here.
What
and
was
the truth
your...
is that there was a good Jewish community here, and there was the Jewish day school. Solomon Schechter was getting off the ground, etc.
Just starting.
So for us, it just sort of made sense that this was a nice town.
You said you came with the Rosenblums, with that in mind, to be in business with Lawrence?
To be in business together.
So
'cause
what
we were
did
in
you end up
business in South
doing
Africa.
here?
So in 1983, we actually acquired a food service equipment manufacturer, and brothers' name, etc. And we were in business together from 1983. And remember, I was with them before in South Africa. We were in business together. In fact, from 1976, we were in business together. And then we sold the company in 2007.
And Veronique, you're calling as an artist. Where did that come in? Was it started here or was it previous?
No, it was started in South Africa. Mainly as a pottery artist, as a sculpture artist. And then coming here, when the kids were growing up, I started taking other classes and moved on to other media, or painting, basically.
Speaking of classes, did either of you, well, you said you took classes here. How did that compare, do you think, to classes in South Africa? What was good or
Which
not?
classes?
Anything that you were enrolled in?
Well, I didn't
Here.
take any serious classes. I took, just art classes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't go for a degree. I did my degree in South Africa.
Coming here, how did you find the community of Dallas? secular and or religious, as far as welcoming you and helping you out with things you needed? How was it in general?
Well,
I
obviously,
think we need to backtrack.
Okay.
Can we backtrack
Yeah,
one
sure,
minute?
sure.
Because we've left out a very important and really very funny thing. What really made us decide on Dallas was that we, Beverly Lewin was already,
I was gonna say
her child Danny, who was the same age as our oldest son, or daughter Colette, was at Solomon Schechter, and they needed more
right,
students.
he was in the top class that kept moving up, and so
The
they
first
needed
class,
more
the
kids
first
to keep
graduating
going.
class.
First
Right.
class.
So she kept on calling us when she heard there was a South African that was thinking of coming to
Right.
Dallas. She kept on calling us. She didn't know us. We had never met, but she kept calling us and telling us how great it is and that we should come. So it
Every-
was really because of Beverly that we
Every
ended up here.
Sunday morning, we got a call from Beverly Lewin. But there were other factors. We looked at some business
Yeah, of
potential. But Beverly
Was like
there is a true story about that, and she was
we
amazing.
felt welcome.
Yeah.
We felt like we were
Yeah.
needed here.
And as far as the community is concerned, the South African community has always been extremely welcoming. Obviously, it was very difficult to adjust. If you think about it, when you walked into a supermarket in South Africa, it's like we do now today. You bump into people that you know, and you just felt good. Coming here was a lot more difficult because you just didn't know that many people. And as I said, South Africans were great, but it was hard to integrate into general society here.
We were
But-
basically welcomed by the South African
Africans.
community
But
more than the general Jewish
yeah,
community.
but I think that one of the things that we were fortunate about is that we got involved immediately into the community. We
I
got
was
involved
just going to
in the
ask you that,
Jewish-
yes.
in the
Yeah.
Jewish day school. Solomon Schechter was part of Sheriff, and so we immediately were actually drawn in, and South Africans may have introduced us, but we ourselves were fortunate that our temperament and our personality was that we said, we're going to volunteer.
Yeah.
I remember wonderful events in Yom Ha'atzmaut. We got involved, and so we were fortunate that people started to recognize and accept us as part of this community. And to this day, we have a wonderful life with the community.
How would you compare, if you can, in a nutshell, Jewish synagogue life here versus what you were used to back home?
Well, that was very different for us because we weren't used to conservative Judaism. There wasn't such a thing. It was either Orthodox or Reform. And as Hylton said, we joined Sheriff because of the school. But we adapted very quickly and we got used to it very quickly. The challenge was later on when his parents came, because they immigrated later. When his parents came, it was harder for them to adapt, but we nevertheless did.
So the funny story about that is that, South African Jews are really more traditional than I would say orthodoxy in terms of where the orthodoxy is here. So conservative was different. And my parents came here, the first Rosh Hashanah that we were here, my parents came for Rosh Hashanah. And we went to the Toplitz Minyan at Sheret Israel, and we were sitting there, and they came up to my mom and dad, and they said, we'd like you to come and open the Oren Kodesh, the Ark. And my mom looked at my dad and said, they're talking to both of us. And so we said, yes. And she went up with him to the Oren Kodesh, and she came back and she said, that was the most uplifting experience I've ever had. And we warned them and said, there's no walking to shul like you used to do in South Africa. Now we drive, we live too far. And the truth is they adapted immediately. And they became, committed members and shul goers at Sheriff.
Yeah, I think it's easier for us, it was easier for us as younger people
Yeah.
than for the older people to adapt.
Yeah.
Can you think of some other things that you got involved in, whether Jewish or general community-wise, besides synagogue life? Anything else you decided to
Yeah.
go for it?
Well, we've been involved. We were involved with Solomon Schechter, Levine Academy for many years, from the
Both
very
of us.
beginning, Veronique and myself. In fact, after a little absence, I'm now back on the board at Levine Academy and on the executive committee. And now I'm a grandparent, not a parent. Obviously, Shereth Israel, we've been involved in the JCC. Never sat on the JCC board, but been involved in, Veronique's been very involved in the art shows that they used to have and helping Judy Cohen there. I was on the board of Federation. I've also been on the board of trustee of the Dallas Jewish Community Foundation, and both of us are very active in the Holocaust Museum. Veronique is now a docent there. I'm immediate past chairman, and I'm involved in hopefully building a new museum there. So our focus has been on the Jewish community, and we're fortunate that we've been able to give something back to a great community that has accepted us.
Veronique, did your mom ever move here?
No.
No, she did not. So how often had you gone back to visit?
Probably every year at that point when she was still alive, right?
Yeah, well, every other year,
or
and
she
then,
would come here.
and then when she got ill,
when she became ill, several times.
Not everyone that I've spoken to has gone back to visit, or even quite that often. But how did you feel each time when you went back to your homeland, to that land? When you went, was it? What were your feelings like going back there?
I think it was just enjoyment of being there and appreciating the beauty of South Africa, and realizing that we live in a town that really has no beauty, but never with any regret. I don't think. No,
Oh, absolutely
never with
agree.
any regrets.
We've never regretted.
And always, trying to keep up with people we left behind was a challenge, and we still see certain cousins, and that's about it. You do move away from people.
Now you mentioned Israel before, and I just want to ask, how important was Israel to both of you growing up, and how important is it now living here?
Okay, I came from a family my father was a very big Zionist, very involved with Zionist.
Personal friend of Menachem Begin.
Right. And in the Congo, he was very active in the community and raising money for Israel. And he even brought Menachem Begin to the Congo. So it is a very important part of my life. Israel is very important.
Even today, Veronique is very important.
Hylton, I'm not sure
Yeah,
that you had the same.
for me, there wasn't. My family was not as. It wasn't It wasn't something that was as passionate for my family as it was for Veronique's parents and family. Many of whom, by the way, went to fight in the various wars in Israel.
Yeah, I've lost quite a few cousins.
Yeah.
In the 6-Day War.
Wars and things like that. So for me, it wasn't that. But I was always involved in things like, I was involved in B'nai Akiva, which is more the religious side. Then when I met Veronique and her father, who was obviously part of the Menachem Begin revisionist movement, I got involved in Beitar, and we became very active. And that's where Israel sort of started to become a more important part of my life. And Israel is today a very important part of our lives.
And have you passed that on, think, to your children?
Unfortunately,
that's a great
I
question.
don't think that they have the same passion as we do.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think maybe things are just growing up. They didn't have the challenges that we did, maybe. Once removed from the Holocaust and the immigration process, you kind of take things for granted. I don't know.
Well, I think.
They all went on team tour,
Right.
for sure, and enjoyed every minute of it. But I think that they're not as passionate as we were.
And they don't see the vulnerability, perhaps, as we do.
Yeah.
They don't see the vulnerability of Israel and the Jewish people as we do.
Maybe one day when we're gone, they will.
And the truth is that there was this period where I don't think that the education about Israel in this country was actually a big focus. And again, there are a lot of young people, my children's age, who are involved in APAC, involved in ADL. So I'm not saying that they didn't. For some reason, our children, I'd say, they don't have that same passion and same concern. But again, it's not as if they're not aware of it. So, you know.
That's all you can do. Now, back to South Africa for a moment. Can you think of some cultural traditions that you've maintained here that you brought with you? For example, that you used to do there.
Well, first of all, I think you need to talk about the fact that you've kept so many of the Sephardic traditions in terms of the food.
So I don't consider my traditions South African, I guess. I mean, my tradition is more Sephardic. The foods, you know, expressions, I guess. What else?
Yeah, I mean, just the way, I mean, our children know, I mean, there's the cookbook, Sephardic cookbook. It just becomes, it's become part of Veronique's life.
So holidays and such, did you do both? Did you
well,
combine? Did you pick one on one day and the other another time?
That's interesting because I think we basically observed holidays the Ashkenazi way, which was interesting. Yeah,
we do. But the foods are, we have a combination.
The foods are a combination, for sure.
We do a combination of foods.
Yeah.
You know, the traditions that we keep here, I mean, I think are just traditions that we would have done anyway. I mean, you keep Shabbat, all the Jewish holidays.
I don't think things have changed tradition-wise. Well, I have to say, though, that we always observed Friday night. We always thought Friday night was important, and we made sure that it continued here, even though the kids... You know, growing up, becoming teenagers, there was the pull of going out on Friday night, but they knew that Friday night was sacrosanct. You know, they never...
Where are your children now?
One is here in Dallas, one in New York, and one in Michigan.
Whoa.
And we have 6 grandchildren.
Typical U.S. family.
That's
spread out.
Now,
you know.
that's the one tradition that we didn't keep here, is the fact in South Africa, it was far more you stayed where your parents were. We both got married from our homes. Me, my home, and Veronique and her home.
Yeah.
And, but here, you're right, it's very spread. In fact, I was having that discussion with somebody today.
What, if anything, can you pinpoint that you miss about South Africa? Besides people, but anything else? No?
Nothing. Personally, nothing.
Personally, myself, absolutely.
I mean, we've been here 30
nothing.
3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's longer than we were in South Africa.
So
certainly longer than I was.
32 years, and this is our home, and we're just happy here. And my mother always taught me that where you happy is where your home is.
What was the ritual like of, I assume, becoming a U.S. citizen?
Oh, it was just studying a little book and making sure you knew that and going in for your test.
I was scared I was going to fail, I remember. It's like, are you kidding me? I got to know all
But
the presidents.
But becoming the citizen was quite an event, right?
Yeah. It was
We
very,
celebrated
very
like
emotional
everybody.
up in the court. And,
So the last thing I'm going to ask you is, each of you, tell us, are you glad you came here and why?
Yeah, we're really glad we came here. You mean to Dallas or to the United
No,
States?
here.
Dallas.
Either or both.
Yeah, Dallas has been really good for us. It's been really good financially. It's been really good bringing up our children. The community is stable, I think. Unfortunately, I think we did not. It did not have a draw for our kids growing up. You know, they moved away. They went to college out of state, and 2 of them never wanted to come back. So, in that way, I'm kind of a little regretful that we didn't choose a more, I don't know, what could we have chosen that would have pleased them better?
Well, they're both in winter climates, and
Well,
we are
that's not-
absolutely
yeah,
not going to
but
go
that
to a
wasn't
winter
the
climate.
I think Texas
they
has
just-
for liberals, which both our children are,
Right.
Texas has got a very, bad reputation.
Okay.
And I think that's the only thing.
Right.
But
And
I don't have regrets.
No, I personally don't have regrets. I think that we have a very full life. We really enjoy being part of the community. My involvement, or our involvement in philanthropy and charitable organizations. By the way, I forgot to mention I'm on the board of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, also something new. But the rewarding thing, and I've always said this both in public, is the fact that the most rewarding thing for all of us is the people that you meet along the way in these various committees. People that I would never have got to know closely. And I think that has been such a rewarding part of our lives here. We have no regrets. And even my kids, the fact that they didn't want to live in Dallas, as Veronique said, her parents left their parents. We left at some point our parents. And we just thank God that they're all on the same continent. And we get on a plane for 3.5 hours and we can see them. And we have a daughter and son-in-law and 3
And that's actually our
grandchildren.
life right now.
And 3 grandchildren here. So
We just
God, we're
travel.
blessed. We have
we're
everything
just
we could ever think
forever
of.
traveling right now. That's what it's
That's it.
boiled down to.
All right. Well, I thank you very much. It's been wonderful,
Thank you.
and we look forward to playing this back and seeing everything. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Joe.
for taking the time.